I had this beautiful plan, the kind of Christmas people in those cozy holiday movies always seem to have. Just me, my husband, maybe a couple of close friends, soft lights, some hot chocolate, a nice quiet dinner, and peace. Oh, glorious peace. I even told myself this year would be different. No stress, no drama, no running around like a headless chicken trying to make everything perfect. For once, Christmas was going to be simple, and I was so proud of myself for making that decision. The tree was up early for once. I didn't even wrestle with the tangled lights this year because I bought those pre-lit ones. Smartest decision of my life. The ornaments were carefully placed, the stockings were already hanging, and the house actually looked like a Pinterest board. I even lit a candle, cinnamon apple pie scent, so it smelled like I baked something even though I absolutely didn't. Honestly, I was feeling like the Queen of Christmas. I sat on the couch with a blanket, sipping my coffee and thought, this is it. This is the calm, peaceful holiday I deserve. I even hummed along with the Christmas playlist, thinking how funny it was that people stressed themselves out so much this time of year. Not me, not this year. And then, my phone buzzed. Just one little buzz. Harmless, innocent. But oh, that buzz changed everything. It was a message from my husband. Hey babe, slight change of plans. My family is coming for Christmas. I swear the coffee almost came shooting out of my nose. I read it again, and again, and again. My brain just couldn't process the words. His family, for Christmas. Coming here. I could actually feel my heart rate go from calm Sunday morning vibes to full-blown marathon runner in less than 5 seconds. My peaceful, picture-perfect Christmas just evaporated. Poof. Gone. I immediately called him, of course. What do you mean your family is coming for Christmas? Which family? How many people are we talking here? Because last time I checked, your family could fill half a football stadium. He said it so casually, too. Oh, just my parents, my brother, his wife, the kids, maybe Aunt Linda. Oh, and Cousin Rachel said she might tag along, too. Nothing big, nothing big, nothing big? That's not a family gathering. That's a full-scale invasion. I sat there in complete silence for a moment, trying to breathe, trying to keep the cinnamon apple pie candle from mocking me with its fake calm aroma. My husband, bless his soul, had the nerve to say, "Don't worry, you'll handle it. You're amazing at this stuff." And then he hung up. I'm amazing at this stuff? No, I am amazing at pretending I can handle this stuff while slowly dying inside. And then the panic spiral started. I pictured his mother walking in and immediately noticing a speck of dust on the TV stand. His father giving me that look when I don't cook the turkey, the traditional way. His brother raiding the fridge like a human vacuum cleaner. The kids running around like sugar-high tornadoes. And Aunt Linda. Oh, Aunt Linda, who once brought her own casserole to my dinner party because she didn't trust my seasoning. My chest tightened just thinking about it. I swear I was sweating harder than if I had just run 3 miles. And me running 3 miles? Please, that would only ever happen if I was being chased by a bear. I looked around at my house, the calm, the quiet, the candle, the beautiful tree, and I actually whispered out loud, "Goodbye, peace. It was nice knowing you." And then the worst thought hit me like a snowball to the face. I was officially in charge. Me, not my husband, who conveniently forgot to mention this little surprise earlier. Oh no, he would be working, running errands, or suddenly very busy when the chaos hit. And his family? They'd look straight at me like I was the hostess of the year. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love them. In small doses. Very small. Like homeopathic small. But hosting the entire circus for Christmas? That's a different level of love I wasn't sure I had in me. I actually caught myself pacing the living room, muttering like a crazy person. Okay, calm down. You can do this. It's just Christmas. It's just food and gifts and decorations and keeping everyone from killing each other. Totally fine. Totally doable. Totally, oh my God, I'm going to die. For a second, I considered faking sick. Like really sick. The kind of sick where nobody would dare come near me. Sorry, everyone. I caught a mysterious 48-hour plague. Maybe next year. But of course, my luck doesn't work that way. I plopped back down on the couch, wrapped the blanket around me like some kind of emotional life jacket, and just stared at the glowing Christmas tree. It looked back at me like it knew the storm that was coming, The little angel on top almost seemed to be smirking like, "Good luck, sweetheart," and that's when it really sank in. There was no escaping this. My in-laws were coming for Christmas, and I was in charge. So, after the initial shock wore off, or at least enough for me to stop pacing like a detective on a true crime show, I realized I had to know exactly what I was dealing with. If there's one thing I've learned from years of surviving family holidays, it's this: you need the guest list. Without it, you're basically going into battle blindfolded. I grabbed my phone and texted my husband again. "Okay, I need names. Who exactly is coming? Don't you dare say just the family again." He sent me a list. A literal list. And I swear it looked less like a family gathering and more like the cast of a sitcom. First up, of course, were his parents. Now, I adore them, truly. But let's be honest. His mother has the sharpest eyes I've ever seen. If there's a wrinkle in the tablecloth or a fork slightly out of place, she'll spot it before she even takes off her coat. And she doesn't say anything directly, oh no. She'll just make a little humming sound like, and that's it. That tiny will haunt me for weeks. His father is the opposite. He doesn't care about wrinkles in the tablecloth. What he cares about is tradition. And by tradition, I mean the exact way his family has celebrated Christmas since 1842, apparently. If the turkey isn't stuffed with whatever his grandmother used to use, he'll tell me about it. If the carols aren't played in the right order, he'll tell me about it. Basically, if I breathe wrong, he'll probably notice. Then there's his brother Dave. Sweet guy, really. But the man eats like he's in training for an Olympic event. I once watched him eat half a pie by himself, and that was before dinner. He also has a habit of opening the fridge every 20 minutes, just to check what's in there. Like Dave, it's the same food that was in there 20 minutes ago. The milk didn't magically turn into cheesecake. Dave's wife, Melissa, is lovely, but how do I put this nicely? She's a talker. And not just small talk, oh no. She wants to discuss deep, life-changing topics while you're elbow-deep in mashed potatoes. Like, so how do you feel about the possibility of alternate universes? Ma'am, I'm just trying to keep the gravy from burning, and then come the kids. They're two little ones, ages 6 and 8. I love them, I do, but they have the energy levels of caffeinated squirrels. The moment they step inside, it's like my house transforms into an indoor trampoline park. Last year, one of them tried to climb the Christmas tree. Not decorate it, climb it. I still have nightmares. Of course, the list didn't stop there, because apparently Aunt Linda is also coming. Yes, casserole bringing Aunt Linda. She's the one who believes no one cooks properly except her. She'll hover in the kitchen, poking things, offering suggestions, and at some point she'll definitely say, "That's not how I would do it." It's like her personal Christmas tradition. And then, just when I thought I had everyone accounted for, my husband casually added, "Oh, and Cousin Rachel said she might come too." Rachel, the gossip queen. The woman could turn a trip to the grocery store into a full-blown soap opera. If someone sneezes at dinner, she'll find a way to turn it into a scandal. By the time I finished reading that list, I swear I could feel my blood pressure spiking. This wasn't a Christmas guest list. This was a lineup of professional chaos creators, each one with their own superpower designed to test my patience. I sat there on the couch, staring at my phone, and actually said out loud, "I'm doomed." Even the tree lights flickered at that exact moment, like they agreed with me. I tried to imagine the scene, his mother inspecting my decorations, his father lecturing me about traditions, Dave raiding the fridge, Melissa giving me a TED Talk on alternate universes, the kids turning my house into a jungle gym, Aunt Linda sneaking her casserole into the oven, and Rachel narrating the whole circus like a tabloid journalist. Honestly, if Netflix had been filming, it would have been their biggest Christmas comedy special of the year. And here's the kicker. My husband genuinely thought this was no big deal. Like, sir, you grew up in this madness. You're immune. I am not. For me, this is like hosting the Olympics of dysfunction, and I haven't even started training. So I did what any sane person would do in that moment. I made a plan. Not a good plan, mind you, but a plan. Step 1, accept that chaos is inevitable. Step 2, try to survive it without crying in the bathroom too many times. Step 3, buy extra wine. Lots of wine. But even as I tried to reassure myself, the truth hit me. This wasn't just a guest list. This was my reality for Christmas. And like it or not, I was in charge of making it work. The next morning, I woke up with that sinking feeling in my stomach, the kind you get before a dentist appointment or a job interview you're not prepared for. Except this wasn't just one appointment, this was an entire holiday with my in-laws, and I was the unwilling event planner, so I did what I had to do. I made a list, a big one: food, drinks, decorations, gifts. The kind of list that makes you look like you're planning for an apocalypse, not a family holiday. And as I scribbled turkey at the top, I actually laughed out loud because I knew, deep down, something was going to go wrong with that bird. Off to the store I went, armed with my list and a forced smile that screamed, "I've got this." Spoiler alert, I did not have this. The grocery store was already a war zone. Shopping carts crashing into each other, kids crying in every aisle, and people fighting over the last can of cranberry sauce like it was liquid gold. I swear Christmas shopping should come with hazard pay. I headed straight for the meat section. I needed a turkey, big enough to feed an army, but not so big that it wouldn't fit in my oven. Simple, right? Wrong. The only turkeys left were either microscopic, like the size of a Cornish hen, or enormous mutant birds that looked like they could have been extras in Jurassic Park. I stood there, staring at these frozen beasts, debating my options. Do I serve a tiny bird and hope no one notices? Or do I get the dinosaur turkey and risk blowing up my oven? Of course, as I'm standing there, some overly cheerful stranger comes up and says, "Oh, that one's a great choice," pointing to the monster bird. "Thanks, random stranger. I'll just go ahead and destroy my kitchen for the sake of appearances." So yes, I bought the dinosaur turkey, because apparently I enjoy suffering. Next stop, produce. I needed potatoes, carrots, green beans, the usual. Except, of course, half the shelves were empty. I found myself digging through bins like a raccoon searching for treasure. And every potato I picked up was either too soft, too small, or shaped like something that should never be put on a dinner table. And don't even get me started on the lines. By the time I got to the register, my cart was overflowing, my arms hurt, and my patience had left my body about an hour earlier. The lady in front of me had exactly 7 coupons, none of which worked, and she insisted the cashier scan them again. And again. And again. Meanwhile, I'm standing there with a turkey that weighs more than I do, wondering if I should just abandon everything and move to another country. But no, I powered through. Because apparently, I'm a glutton for punishment. When I finally got home and unloaded everything, I realized I had, of course, forgotten things. The candles, the wrapping paper, and oh yes, the batteries. Why is it always the batteries? Every toy, every decoration, every blinking Christmas thing requires batteries, and somehow I never buy enough. So back out I went. This time to the department store, which was somehow even worse than the grocery store. The parking lot looked like a demolition derby, with cars circling like vultures. Inside, people were grabbing toys off shelves like contestants in one of those game shows where you only have 60 seconds to grab as much as you can. I tried to get wrapping paper, but the only ones left were either covered in glitter that would haunt me until July, or prints so ugly they looked like they were designed as a prank. And while I was debating between Santa riding a surfboard and weird neon snowmen, someone actually elbowed me out of the way to grab the last roll of plain red. Merry Christmas to me, then came the lights. My husband had insisted we needed more, because apparently our house wasn't visible from space yet. But the only sets left were tangled messes shoved into half-broken boxes. I picked one up, and a bulb immediately fell out and rolled under the shelf. Of course it did. By this point, I was muttering to myself again. It's fine. Totally fine. Just Christmas. Just the most stressful holiday of the year. No big deal. People were staring, but honestly, I didn't care. If talking to myself in aisle 7 kept me from losing it completely, so be it. When I finally got home again, sweaty, exhausted, and slightly traumatized, I spread everything out on the table. The turkey that could crush me, the ugly wrapping paper, the questionable potatoes. It looked less like Christmas prep and more like the aftermath of a survival challenge. And then I remembered the gifts. Oh yes, the gifts. I had most of them, but of course I still needed a few more. Shopping online was out of the question because delivery times were already delayed until January. So that meant yet another trip out into the madness tomorrow. As I sat there, staring at my disaster haul, I couldn't help but laugh. Not a normal laugh, a slightly unhinged, I might lose my mind kind of laugh. Because at this point, what else can you do? Either laugh or cry, and crying would only make my mascara run. I poured myself a glass of wine, okay, maybe two, and made a silent vow. No matter how bad it got, no matter how chaotic the next few days became, I was going to survive this Christmas. Maybe not gracefully, maybe not with my sanity fully intact, but I would survive. And then, just as I started to feel the tiniest bit confident, my phone buzzed again. It was my husband. Oh, by the way, my parents might arrive a little earlier than expected. Hope that's okay, of course. Of course they are. So there I was, still recovering from my traumatic shopping adventures when the doorbell rang. I froze. It was too early for carolers, too late for deliveries, and way too soon for anyone to be arriving. But of course, because the universe has a twisted sense of humor, it was them, his parents, arriving early. I opened the door with the fakest smile plastered across my face. "Oh, hi, you're here," I said, like I hadn't just internally screamed when the bell rang. His mother stepped inside first, her eyes immediately scanning the living room like a security camera. I swear she has a built-in radar for dust and clutter. She didn't even take off her coat before glancing at the mantel and saying, "Oh, you went with the gold garland this year." Not a compliment, not a criticism, just that dreaded neutral observation that somehow manages to sound like a judgment. His father followed right behind her, carrying exactly nothing, because of course he doesn't believe in luggage when there are other people to carry it for him. He looked around, nodded once and said, "Smells different this year." Smells different. It smelled like cinnamon apple pie, which is festive. But no, apparently, it wasn't the approved traditional scent of Christmas. I helped them with their bags, yes, me, while my husband was still on his way back from errands. Convenient. His mother hovered behind me, clutching her handbag like she was on a royal inspection. "Oh, I see you put the tree by the window this year. Interesting choice. Interesting choice." Translation: why on earth would you put it there? I wanted to scream, "Because it fit!" But instead, I smiled and said, "Yes, I thought it looked nice with the light coming in. Because I'm polite like that." Once they were settled in the living room, I offered them tea. Big mistake. His mother has very specific tea requirements. Black tea, no sugar, but with milk, but not too much milk. I brought her a cup, and she stirred it, took one sip, and made the sound. That little hum, the that says, "I will never forget this failure." His father, meanwhile, asked if I had the fireplace ready to go. The fireplace? Oh, sure. Let me just light a cozy fire while I'm simultaneously cooking a dinosaur turkey, scrubbing invisible dust, and keeping myself from collapsing under the pressure of your silent disapproval. I mumbled something about setting it up later, and he gave me that disappointed nod that said I had already failed Christmas, and then came the small talk. The dreaded small talk. His mother leaned in and asked, "So, what are you making for dinner?" Innocent question, right? Wrong, this was a trap. I listed off the basics. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans, stuffing. She smiled, that tight smile people give when they're holding back judgment, and said, "Oh, how modern. In our family, we always had sweet potato casserole with marshmallows." Marshmallows. On potatoes. I smiled back and said, "Well, maybe next year." Which is code 4 over my dead body. His father joined in, asking if I planned to read The Night Before Christmas to the kids after dinner. I didn't even know that was a tradition, but apparently, in his mind, Christmas is incomplete without it. I nodded and said, "Of course," while secretly planning to Google the entire poem later so I wouldn't be accused of destroying Christmas for generations to come. The whole time, I kept glancing at the clock, praying for my husband to get home and rescue me. But no, he was conveniently delayed, probably avoiding the situation like a coward. So there I was, stuck entertaining his parents, nodding politely while internally screaming. At one point, his mother asked if she could just take a peek in the kitchen. Rookie mistake on my part. I should have locked the door. She wandered in, opened the fridge, and said, "Oh, that's a very large turkey. I do hope it will cook all the way through." Yes, thank you for the reminder. Because I wasn't already lying awake at night, picturing myself poisoning the entire family with undercooked dinosaur bird. Meanwhile, His father settled himself in the armchair, pulled out a newspaper, an actual newspaper, like it was 1953, and sighed loudly every few minutes. Just sighed, as if to remind me that he was unimpressed with everything. By the time my husband finally walked through the door, I had practically chewed a hole through my own tongue from holding back snarky comments. He waltzed in, all cheerful, kissed his mom on the cheek, shook his dad's hand, and said, "Isn't this great? Everyone's here. Great. Yes. Fantastic. Wonderful." I shot him a look so sharp it could have sliced through steel, but of course he didn't notice. Men never notice. Dinner that night wasn't even real dinner, just something simple I threw together, but you would have thought it was an audition for MasterChef. His mother delicately pushed the food around her plate, while his father cleared his throat at least 3 times like he was preparing to make an announcement about the state of my cooking. And then, as we were cleaning up, his mother said the words that sent a shiver down my spine. "I can't wait to see everyone else tomorrow. It will be so nice to have the whole family together, the whole family." As if this wasn't already enough. I smiled, because what else can you do? But inside I was screaming again. Because if this was just the warm-up round, I was in serious trouble when the rest of the in-laws arrived. The next day, I woke up with one single thought running through my head. Today is the day the circus comes to town. Except this time, the circus wasn't setting up a tent in the park. It was storming directly into my house, and I was the unwilling ringmaster. I barely had time to make myself a cup of coffee before the doorbell rang. Not once, not twice. It rang 3 times in rapid fire, like whoever was on the other side was trying to break the record for most aggressive doorbell pressing. I already knew. The flood had begun. I opened the door, and there they were. My brother-in-law Dave, his wife Melissa, and their 2 kids, who were already vibrating with energy like they'd just mainlined sugar. Actually, scratch that, like they were made of sugar. The moment they stepped inside, the kids took off like rockets. One went left, the other went right, and suddenly my living room was a racetrack. My Christmas tree swayed dangerously as little Timmy brushed past it, and I swear the angel on top held on for dear life. "Hi," Melissa chirped, giving me a hug while somehow talking at the speed of light. "The drive was crazy. We almost hit a deer. But isn't the snow beautiful? And oh my gosh, your house looks so festive. I love what you did with the garland. Do you ever think about how small we are in the universe? Like, what if there are other versions of us celebrating Christmas right now in another dimension?" I blinked. Thanks?" Meanwhile, Dave had already made a beeline for the kitchen. Not to say hello. Not to compliment the tree. No. Straight to the fridge, like a man on a mission. And of course, he opened it, stared inside for a full 30 seconds and said, "What's for lunch?" Lunch? It was 10 in the morning. Before I could even answer, the kids came tearing back through the hallway, this time dragging their suitcases like battering rams. One clipped my shin, and I saw my entire life flash before my eyes. But there was no time to recover, because behind them came Aunt Linda. Yes, Casserole Linda, marching in like she was carrying the crown jewels. Sure enough, in her hands was her infamous dish, wrapped in enough aluminum foil to block satellite signals. She barely said hello before announcing, "Don't worry, I brought something edible." Edible. As if everything I'd ever cooked in my life had been questionable at best. I plastered on a smile and said, "Oh, thank you, Linda," while mentally imagining myself launching her casserole into orbit. Right behind her, Cousin Rachel swept in, coat still on, phone already out. "You would not believe the drama at the gas station," she announced, not even pausing for breath. This guy tried to cut in line, and then this lady threw a cup of coffee, and apparently someone called the police, but the officer was flirting with the cashier. It was wild. Of course it was. With Rachel, it always is. I could stub my toe, and she'd find a way to turn it into a full-blown scandal. Within minutes, my house went from calm, well, semi-calm, considering the parental inspection the night before, to complete pandemonium. Coats were flung over chairs, boots tracked snow across my freshly mopped floor, and the sound of voices overlapped so much it was like listening to 5 different radio stations at once. The kids discovered the dog's squeaky toy and decided it was their new favorite instrument. Squeak, 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 non-stop, until I seriously considered burying that toy in the backyard. Dave had already opened a bag of chips without asking and was crunching so loudly it sounded like gravel in a blender. Aunt Linda hovered in the kitchen, watching me like a hawk, while Cousin Rachel narrated every minor inconvenience like she was auditioning for a gossip podcast. At one point, Melissa asked me, "Do you ever think about what aliens would think of our holidays?" I stared at her, wide-eyed, while holding a tray of cookies that the kids immediately stole and stuffed into their mouths. Maybe they'd run away?" was all I managed, and then came the coats. Oh, the coats. Everyone dumped theirs on my poor couch until it looked like a mountain range made entirely of polyester and faux fur. I tried to hang them up, but every time I turned around, another one was thrown on the pile. By the end, my couch had vanished. Rest in peace, couch. I'll see you after New Year's. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, someone, still not sure who, let the dog out. Except instead of going outside, he went sprinting through the house with one of Aunt Linda's dinner rolls in his mouth, while the kids chased him, screaming like banshees. The dog thought it was the best game ever. I thought about pouring another glass of wine, and it wasn't even noon. Meanwhile, my husband finally strolled in, smiling like this was the happiest moment of his life. "Isn't this great? Everyone together," he said, completely oblivious to the chaos unfolding around him. I glared at him so hard I'm surprised he didn't burst into flames on the spot. At one point, I found myself standing in the kitchen, holding a half-broken ornament, listening to the chaos in the living room, and thinking I could just walk out the back door. I could get in the car, drive to the nearest hotel, and check in under a fake name. Nobody would ever find me, but no, I stayed, because apparently I love torture. By the time dinner prep rolled around, my house looked like it had been ransacked by elves on a sugar high. Coats everywhere, crumbs on the floor, kids wrestling over a candy cane, Rachel live reporting on it like she was covering the evening news, and Linda sighing dramatically in the kitchen, and that, my friends, was only the beginning. The moment I stepped into the kitchen, I knew I was in trouble. It was like stepping into a battlefield where the enemy wasn't an opposing army, but my own family members with opinions, casseroles, and unsolicited advice. I took a deep breath. "Okay, you've got this. Just follow the plan. Turkey in the oven, sides on the stove, desserts prepped. Simple. At least it should have been. Except nothing about Christmas in this house was ever simple. The turkey was already giving me anxiety. That massive prehistoric bird sat there, thawing, mocking me with its sheer size. I could practically hear it whisper, "You'll never cook me all the way through." I shoved it into the oven anyway, muttering, "Please don't kill anyone." Of course, that's when Aunt Linda appeared at my shoulder, holding her casserole like it was the Holy Grail. "You're not putting that in with the turkey, are you? It'll ruin the flavor." I smiled tightly. "Don't worry, Linda, I've got it under control." But Linda doesn't hear words like under control. She hears, "Please take over my kitchen." Within 5 minutes, she was rearranging my spice rack, telling me that my paprika looked cheap, and asking if I had ever considered investing in real salt. Real salt? What does that even mean? Meanwhile, Dave wandered in, opened the fridge again, and started rummaging. "Is there cheese?" he asked, his voice muffled as his head disappeared behind the door. "I just want a little snack." "A snack?" I nearly shrieked. "Dinner is in 3 hours." But it didn't matter. He was already chomping on a block of cheddar like it was an apple. Then Melissa floated in, her eyes dreamy. "Do you ever wonder what aliens would think of turkey? Like, would they be offended? Or would they cook it differently?" She said this while holding my potato peeler upside down, trying to figure out how it worked, and just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, his mother entered. The queen of subtle judgments. She looked at the stove, at my pots bubbling away, and made that little sound again. That hum that makes me want to scream into a pillow. "You're boiling the potatoes?" she asked, eyebrows raised. "Yes," I said through clenched teeth. "Oh, we always baked them. Much fluffier that way." I swear I almost threw the whole pot out the window. While she hovered, his father leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed like a judge in a courtroom. "You know," he began, "back in our day, Christmas dinner didn't require all these gadgets. We just cooked everything over a fire. Much better flavor. Oh, fantastic idea. Let me just drag the turkey out to the backyard and roast it over an open flame like a pioneer. The chaos only escalated from there. The kids stormed in, demanding cookies. I gave them one each just to keep them quiet, but that only fueled them like gasoline on a fire. Within minutes, they were bouncing off the walls again, one of them trying to juggle the cookie tin, while the other shouted, "Look at me, I'm Santa!" before nearly knocking over the mixer. Rachel, of course, was sitting on a stool, live narrating everything on her phone. Breaking news, turkey goes into oven at 3:00 p.m., but will it survive? Tensions are high in the kitchen as Aunt Linda stages a hostile takeover. I glared at her, but she didn't even look up, and then it happened. The smoke. I had been so distracted by everyone else that I forgot about the green beans on the stove. The smell hit me first, a sort of burnt, bitter aroma that did not say, "Christmas cheer." Then came the smoke, curling up like a villain entering the room. "Oh my gosh, something's burning." Melissa gasped, as though we were in mortal danger. "Yes, thank you, Captain Obvious," I shouted, rushing to the pot. I yanked it off the burner, but it was too late. The beans were charred, blackened beyond recognition, and then, beep, 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 the smoke alarm went off, loud, shrill, blaring, echoing through the whole house like a banshee. The kids started screaming, the dog started barking, and his father shouted, "Back in my day, we didn't even have alarms. We trusted our noses." I grabbed a towel and started frantically waving it under the alarm, praying it would stop before the neighbors thought we were on fire. Meanwhile, Linda was muttering, "This wouldn't have happened if you used my method," and Dave had the audacity to say, "So, does this mean dinner's delayed?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the burnt beans, the towel, and maybe the entire turkey out the window. But instead, I just kept waving that towel until the alarm finally went silent. The silence that followed was almost worse, because everyone was staring at me like I was the villain who ruined Christmas. I took a deep breath, forced a smile, and said, "Dinner is still on track. Nobody panic." Of course, inside, I was panicking enough for everyone. The rest of the prep wasn't much better. The mashed potatoes turned lumpy. The gravy was suspiciously thin. And every time I tried to fix something, another relative popped in to help. At one point, I caught Linda adding her own seasoning to my stuffing. "It needed a little something," she said sweetly. "Something?" It needed her to back away. That's what it needed. By the time everything was finally ready, my kitchen looked like a war zone. Pots everywhere, flour on the counter, smoke still lingering in the air. I looked at the turkey sweating in the oven and whispered, "Please don't betray me now." And with that, I carried the food to the dining table, plastered on my best hostess smile, and prepared for the next round of chaos. We finally made it. The food was on the table. The turkey survived, the potatoes were somewhat edible, and the smoke had cleared enough that I wasn't worried about the fire department showing up. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt like I was about to referee a heavyweight boxing match. Everyone crowded around the table, fighting for seats like it was a game of musical chairs. The kids wanted to sit at the grown-up table and pitched full-scale protests when I suggested the little card table I'd set up just for them. "That's not fair," they whined, already climbing onto chairs that were way too big for them. One nearly tipped over, and I had to grab the back just in time to keep him from face-planting into the mashed potatoes. Once everyone was finally seated, I realized I had the worst seat in the house, directly between Aunt Linda and my mother-in-law. One critic on the left, another on the right. Perfect. I might as well have been sitting in the middle of a food review panel. We started with polite oohs and ahs about the spread. That lasted approximately 30 seconds before the commentary began. "Is the turkey dry?" My father-in-law asked after his first bite, his face serious, like he was delivering a weather report. "Oh no, it's fine," Linda replied too quickly, which of course meant she thought it was dry. She then added, "My recipe uses a butter-soaked cloth over the breast. Keeps it moist every time." I took a sip of wine and muttered, "Maybe next year, Linda." Meanwhile, Dave was piling his plate so high it looked like a food mountain, shoveling it in at record speed. His wife, Melissa, stared at her peas as if they were tiny green aliens. Do you ever think peas are like the planets of the vegetable world? Each one its own little universe, she said dreamily. I ignored her and focused on my plate. One goal: get through dinner without screaming. Then the argument started. It began innocently enough with a debate about holiday movies. Cousin Rachel loudly declared that Die Hard was the best Christmas movie ever made, which sent Linda into a rant about how violence has no place in Christmas. Our traditions! Rachel rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. From there, it spiraled. My father-in-law brought up politics, which I had specifically begged my husband to ban from the table. Within minutes, we had half the table shouting about taxes and the other half arguing about health care, while the kids were trying to feed turkey skin to the dog under the table. I kept smiling, nodding, silently chanting, "Don't flip the table. Don't flip the table." And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, secrets started spilling. Rachel leaned across the table, lowered her voice in the most dramatic way possible, and said, "So, who's going to talk about Uncle Joe's new girlfriend?" Everyone froze, forks in midair. My husband choked on his wine. Linda gasped so loudly you'd think she just discovered Santa wasn't real. "What girlfriend?" his mother demanded, narrowing her eyes. Rachel smirked. "Oh, you didn't know?" Cue chaos. Voices overlapping, accusations flying, and poor Uncle Joe, who had been quietly enjoying his stuffing, sinking lower and lower in his chair. Meanwhile, the kids were staging their own drama. Little Timmy was crying because his sister stole his candy cane, and his sister was crying because she dropped hers in the gravy. The dog was under the table, eating who knows what, and Dave was too busy asking for seconds to notice the entire family was falling apart around him. At one point, Linda leaned over to me and whispered, "See? This is why I don't trust store-bought cranberry sauce. It brings bad energy." Bad energy? "Lady, the bad energy is sitting right next to me." I tried redirecting. "So, who wants dessert?" I said brightly, like a kindergarten teacher breaking up a fight. Nobody heard me. The political debate had reignited, this time about climate change, while Melissa started talking about how she thought she'd seen a UFO on the drive here. "It was probably just a plane," Dave said through a mouthful of stuffing. "No, it was glowing green," she argued, while the kids shouted, "Alien turkey! Alien turkey!" and ran around the table flapping their arms. I sat there, clutching my wine glass like it was my only lifeline. Finally, mercifully, there was a lull. People were eating again, chewing instead of yelling. I thought maybe, just maybe, we were safe. And then my mother-in-law turned to me with that sweet but deadly smile. "So," she said, "when are you two having kids?" I nearly spit my wine across the table. The whole room went silent. Every head turned toward me, waiting for my answer like I was testifying in court. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out, just a strangled noise that could have been mistaken for a dying animal. Thankfully, my husband jumped in with a joke about how the dog was enough work already, and everyone laughed, but the damage was done. My cheeks were on fire, my patience was gone, and dessert hadn't even been served yet. By the time I brought out the pie, I felt like I'd aged 10 years. Everyone grabbed a slice, talking over one another, crumbs flying, whipped cream ending up in places it didn't belong. The kids demanded extra sugar, the dog licked the plates, and Linda made one last comment about how her crust was always flakier. I smiled, nodded, and thought, only a few more hours. You can survive this. Probably. If you've ever wondered what pure, unfiltered chaos looks like, I can tell you, it looks exactly like my living room on Christmas night during gift exchange. Imagine a snowstorm made of wrapping paper. Add in kids screaming like they've just won the lottery. Throw in adults pretending to love things they secretly hate. And then sprinkle a generous helping of passive-aggressive commentary. That's the recipe. It started innocently enough. I handed out the gifts I'd painstakingly labeled, thinking I'd been organized. Ha! Foolish me. Within seconds, the carefully stacked presents had been torn apart, ribbons flying, paper shredding like a confetti cannon had exploded. The kids were the worst. They didn't even read the tags. They just ripped into whatever box they could grab first. Little Timmy opened a gift meant for his grandfather, a pair of wool socks, and burst into tears. "Why would Santa give me socks?" he wailed, clutching them like they were the ultimate betrayal. Meanwhile, His sister unwrapped a bottle of wine meant for Aunt Linda and immediately shouted, "Mom, I got juice." Before trying to chug it, I nearly dove across the room in slow motion yelling, "No!" like an action hero. Thankfully, I intercepted before we had a very awkward call to poison control. As I was trying to sort out the mix-ups, I heard Cousin Rachel squeal, "Oh my gosh, who gave me this sweater?" She held up a neon green monstrosity with sequins that spelled out, "Ho ho hot." Everyone looked around, confused. "That's not for you," I said quickly. But the damage was done. She was already taking selfies in it, posting with the caption, "Family knows my vibe." Across the room, Dave tore into his box with all the finesse of a bear attacking a cooler. He pulled out a kitchen gadget I'd picked specifically for Melissa. Without missing a beat, he said, "Sweet, a potato ritzer," and immediately started making plans to try it out, while Melissa sat there opening the shaving kit that was supposed to be his. She held up the razor and asked dreamily, "Do you think aliens shave?" I ignored her. Then came the embarrassing gifts. Because of course there had to be embarrassing gifts. His mother opened the present from Rachel, a fitness tracker, and said loudly, "Oh, so you're saying I need to exercise more?" The entire room went quiet. You could hear the dog chewing on wrapping paper in the corner. Before I could smooth things over, Linda opened her gift from me, a cookbook, and sniffed. Cooking for beginners? Interesting choice. I wanted to sink into the couch and never resurface, and then of course someone handed me a gift. I unwrapped it smiling only to reveal an apron that said, "Kiss the cook if you dare." Everyone laughed. Hilarious. Truly. Just what I needed after nearly burning down the kitchen. The kids eventually calmed down, by which I mean they collapsed into sugar comas after devouring half a box of candy canes. But the adults weren't much better. At one point, my father-in-law opened a gift card and said, "What am I supposed to do with this? I don't shop online." Then, in the same breath, he handed his wife a frying pan and said, "See? Practical." She did not look amused. Meanwhile, Rachel was still broadcasting everything like a reality TV host. "Drama alert," she announced. "Grandpa got socks again, and Aunt Linda is offended by her cookbook. Stay tuned for more awkwardness." By the time the last gift was opened, my living room looked like a landfill of cardboard and glitter. The dog had eaten at least 3 bows. The kids were playing swords with empty wrapping tubes. And Linda was lecturing me about thoughtful gifts. I sat back, clutching my 3rd glass of wine, and thought, only one more round of chaos left. You can do this. Just hang on. I should have known the calm after gift-giving was too good to last. For about 20 minutes, everyone was occupied. Kids playing with their new toys, adults sipping drinks, me mentally checking the countdown to bedtime. But in every Christmas story, there's that moment when everything unravels. My moment was about to arrive in glorious, flaming style. It started with the lights. 1 second, the tree was twinkling beautifully, the garland glowing, the house looking like a Hallmark card. The next, zit, pop, and half the lights went out. The tree flickered violently like it was possessed before plunging into darkness. Then came the faint smell of burning plastic. "Did you pay the electric bill?" Dave joked through a mouthful of leftover stuffing. "Very funny," I snapped, yanking at the extension cord like I was trying to perform CPR. The lights sputtered, sparked, and died completely. The kids immediately started screaming, "It's broken!" Christmas is ruined, which is always what you want to hear after weeks of effort. Before I could calm them down, the dog leapt onto the tree, barking at the dead lights as if he could scare them back to life. The tree swayed. Everyone shouted, "No!" in slow motion as the whole thing tipped like a sinking ship. Crash. Ornaments shattered across the floor. Tinsel flew through the air like glittering confetti at the world's worst parade. The angel on top landed face down in the mashed potato bowl still sitting on the table. I stood there frozen, staring at the carnage while Rachel narrated into her phone. Breaking news. Christmas tree takes a dive. Witnesses describe it as tragic but predictable. I wanted to scream. Instead, I muttered, "It's fine. Everything's fine. Trees fall sometimes." But of course it wasn't fine, because next came dessert. I had carefully prepared pies earlier in the day. apple, pumpkin, and one chocolate cream that I was secretly most proud of. They were my redemption plan. Even if dinner was chaos, I told myself, at least dessert will save the night. So when I brought them out, balancing all 3 pies like a clumsy waitress, I prayed to every holiday spirit to just let this one thing go right. Naturally, it didn't. Halfway to the table, little Timmy zoomed past me, pretending to be a reindeer. He crashed straight into my leg. My grip faltered. Time slowed. The pies tilted, slid, and then splat apple face down on the rug. Pumpkin smeared across the wall. Chocolate cream? Oh, sweet chocolate cream. Right on Dave's lap. He froze, looked down at himself covered in whipped cream, and said, "Well, at least it's delicious." Then he started eating it off his pants like that was normal behavior. I just stood there, covered in pie filling, blinking back tears and laughter at the same time. Everyone was talking at once, Linda gasping about the waste of perfectly good pumpkin, the kids shrieking with laughter, his mother shaking her head with that "this never happened when I hosted" look, and Rachel live streaming the entire thing. That's when I broke. I didn't just snap, I detonated. I grabbed a roll of wrapping paper, held it like a sword and shouted, "Everybody out of my kitchen, out! This is not a democracy. This is a dictatorship, and I am the supreme ruler." The kids froze mid-sword fight with their empty gift tubes. Dave paused mid-bite of his pants pie. Even the dog stopped chewing on an ornament long enough to look at me like, "Whoa, she's lost it." But I wasn't done. Oh no, once the floodgates opened, there was no stopping me. I cooked, I cleaned, I hosted this madhouse, and what do I get? Burnt beans, a dead tree, pie on the carpet, and criticism about my cranberry sauce. Do you know what I wanted this Christmas? 1 glass of wine in peace. That's it, just 1! But no, apparently I signed up for the Olympic Games of family torture. Everyone stared at me in stunned silence. And then, of course, Linda said, "Well, maybe if you'd followed my recipe." "Don't. Start," I hissed, pointing the wrapping paper sword at her like I was challenging her to a duel, and then, inexplicably, I started laughing. Hysterical, uncontrollable laughter, the kind that bubbles up when you're so far past your breaking point that the only option left is to find it funny. I laughed until tears ran down my face, until my sides hurt, until the kids started giggling too because apparently, Mommy had lost her mind, and in that ridiculous, messy, pie-covered moment, something shifted. Everyone else started laughing too. Even his father chuckled, muttering, "Best entertainment we've had all year." Dave raised his pie-covered hands like a champion. The kids climbed on the fallen tree like it was a jungle gym. For the first time all day, nobody was arguing. Nobody was judging. Nobody was complaining. We were all just laughing together at the absolute disaster that was our Christmas. I collapsed onto the couch, still laughing, and said, "Well, at least we'll never forget this one." After my full-on meltdown, something strange happened. Instead of awkward silence or another round of judgment, the whole family actually relaxed. Maybe it was because I'd finally said what everyone was secretly thinking. Maybe it was because seeing me wield a roll of wrapping paper like a medieval knight was the most entertainment they'd had in years. Either way, the tension cracked wide open, and what spilled out was laughter. Real, genuine, belly-aching laughter. Even Linda was laughing. Okay, yes, she was laughing in that "I told you so" kind of way. But still, progress. The kids were still climbing on the fallen Christmas tree like it was their new jungle gym. But now, instead of scolding them, the adults started cheering them on. "Go, Timmy, go!" someone shouted as he tried to balance on a branch like a gymnast. His sister grabbed a piece of tinsel and wore it like a superhero cape. Honestly, I couldn't even be mad anymore. That poor tree had been through enough. At least it was bringing joy in its final moments. Dave, still covered in chocolate cream pie, stood up and announced, "Best Christmas ever," as though wearing dessert was a normal part of holiday attire. Melissa was beside him, staring at the ceiling lights with dreamy fascination. "Do you ever think Christmas lights are like little stars in your house?" she murmured, and for once, instead of rolling my eyes, I just laughed. Because she wasn't wrong, and then something even more miraculous happened. People started helping. Not helping like before, with unsolicited advice and meddling hands. Actual helping. His father grabbed a broom and started sweeping up shattered ornaments, humming carols off-key while he worked. His mother quietly gathered the ruined dessert plates and for the first time all day didn't say a word about how she would have done it differently. Linda actually handed me a glass of wine instead of another casserole critique. Rachel put down her phone, briefly, to help the kids untangle themselves from the tinsel. The whole house smelled faintly of smoke, pie, and pine needles. But suddenly it felt cozy. Lived in. Real. At one point, we all ended up squished together on the couch, coats piled on the floor, plates balanced precariously, and the dog asleep in the middle like he owned the place. Nobody cared that the tree was sideways, that the turkey had been questionable, or that the pies were now part of the carpet. We were too busy swapping stories, laughing at the day's disasters, and reminding each other why we actually put ourselves through this madness every year. And me? For the first time since this circus began, I felt something I hadn't felt all week. Joy. Exhausted, messy, slightly wine-soaked joy, but joy nonetheless. I realized then that this was it, the heart of Christmas. Not the perfect dinner, not the Instagram-worthy decorations, not the gifts wrapped like a department store ad. It was this, the chaos, the noise, the laughter, the mess. The family, in all their imperfect, quirky glory. Sure, they drive me absolutely insane. Sure, I nearly burned down the kitchen and lost a battle with a turkey. Sure, the tree is lying on the floor like a fallen soldier. But at the end of the day, we were all together. And somehow, in spite of everything, it felt perfect. Well, perfectly imperfect. The night wound down with the kids finally passing out on a blanket nest of wrapping paper, the adults sipping the last of the wine, and the house settling into a rare, peaceful quiet. I looked around at the disaster zone, crumbs everywhere, tinsel on the dog, chocolate pie stains I'd never get out of the carpet, and I smiled, because this was our Christmas. Messy, loud, ridiculous, and absolutely ours. I raised my glass one last time and said, "Merry Christmas, everyone." Next year, I paused for dramatic effect, watching their faces. I'm going on vacation. The room erupted in laughter, and for once, it was the good kind, the kind that warms you from the inside out. And just like that, the chaos didn't feel like chaos anymore. It felt like a miracle.